All right. Let's get this out of the way first. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed on Tailboard Talks Firefighter podcast are solely those of the speakers, guests, and host, and do not in any way represent the thoughts or views or opinions of any other employer, partnership, or sponsor. The material and information in this podcast is for general information purposes only and should be used at the listener's discretion.
Here comes the intro. Skip forward 30 seconds if you want to get right to the episode. This is the Tailboard Talk podcast, the best health, wellness, and lifestyle resource for the fire service. We're using stories, lessons, and tips from the front lines to give a realistic view of what the job can do to us and how we can make it out alive. I'm Chris Morella, a firefighter since 03, medic since 05, full-time since 08, and promoted to lieutenant in 20. I'm also a personal trainer and strength coach, and I'm here to give you the best information and host the best discussions to make us capable and durable, both on the job and away from it. So grab a heater, steal some fancy creamer from First Shift, and let's go chat. The most recent one she sent me was a couple out at a bar that said all it took was 3 margaritas and a couple chips and queso to realize that we don't actually hate each other. It's just these kids driving us nuts. And so it's like as soon as you get out of that environment, as soon as you can remember why you like this person, like it's glaringly obvious. But, man, in the heat of the moment, it's just like, what is going on here? And it's just such chaos, and it's been a real learning curve for us. I'll tell you that. It's been a real learning curve. Yeah. And for me, what's been surprisingly a learning curve is like when Katie starts disciplining the kids, I assume that she's frustrated or in a bad mood, right? So she'll give them like the frown or whatever and be stern with them and kind of put them through the ringer, and they'll be upset, and then she'll talk them through it because we're trying to do the kind of a modified gentle parenting thing as best we can. And so she'll do that, and I'm like, oh, man, she's going to be so pissed after this. And she'll walk back in the kitchen, and she'll be like, so what do you want for dinner? I'm like, are you not mad? Are you not? What are you doing? Am I in trouble? And she's like, no, I had to discipline them. I'm like, God, this is so weird. This is just such a hard shift to make from minute to minute. Like, as soon as she's out of their sight, she's like, so what else is new? I'm like, I thought I was in trouble, too. That's what's new. So, it's a tough one.
And that's so common, man. I mean, in the same thing, like if you come down on your kids, she'll think, oh my gosh, I did something to upset him.
Right. Right. The whole house is in trouble. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, so man. Do you have kids of your own?
I do. I have 2 adult children.
Okay. So you've seen most of the phases of this thing so far.
Yeah, exactly. And that's this whole thing with stronger families, the dynamic of the family, it just kind of, changes over time.
Yeah.
And my bride and I, our goal was to raise our children to be good people, good citizens, pay their taxes and, just be good people, right? I mean, that was our goal.
Cover the bases.
Productive in society, right? And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. I tell people all the time, the hardest thing you'll ever do in life is be married. The second hardest thing you'll ever do in life is have kids.
Yeah.
Because your kids want your attention and your spouse wants your attention. And so you're constantly battling of, who's getting my attention, right?
Yeah.
And it's on both sides. It's for your bride and it's also for you. And then you throw in that you're a first responder, and that brings in just a whole nother dynamic of what that life is going to look like and how it's going to play out. And I'm pretty much sure that I did it the wrong way.
All right.
And that's why I'm doing this Stronger Families thing. I'm trying to help people not make the same mistakes that I made.
Okay. All right. So let's start with give me the basis of Stronger Families. So first of all, tell me who you are, then tell me about Stronger Families. Then we'll get into some of your mistakes that I can learn from.
Okay. So Chris, I have been in the fire service for 44 years, and I started when I was 16 years old. I was kind of born and raised until like the age of 12 in East LA. And from East LA, we transplanted up to Washington State in an area. It was a town called Toppenish. There's about 5,000 people there. And it's pretty much a cowboy town, an Indian, Native American town that's on the reservation. And then the people that, kind of the farmers in that area. And it's pretty much the apple orchard, cherries, peaches, that kind of stuff, asparagus. And then it used to be a huge sugar beet area. And in the Yakima Valley, it's kind of the fruit bowl. The Yakima Valley is kind of the fruit bowl of the state of Washington. And so when I didn't have a real good upbringing with my dad, and it got pretty bad sometimes. And my uncle was a police officer. My dad was a reserve officer because it was a small town, so they did that kind of stuff. My best friend's mom was a police officer. I just kind of grew up in that kind of area. Our neighbor was a firefighter, and the other neighbor on the other side of us was a police officer. So I kind of grew up in this first responder world and really thought that I'd become a cop because that's kind of what it was in my family. And this neighbor found out that I was having problems with my dad. And I'd run away from home a bunch of times and stuff like that. And he says, "Hey, I want you to come down to the firehouse." And so I'd never been to a fire station before. And so I went down to the fire station, rode my bike over there. And his name was Ron Cobb, just the greatest guy. And he said, "Hey, I want to show you around the fire station." And so, we walk around, there's these big red trucks and, all this stuff and the tools. And he's by himself because it's a small town. So it was just one person working, and then everybody else was volunteers. And I was probably 14 years old when this started. And so for the next 2.5 years, 3 years until I was 16, I'd just go hang out at the fire station. And, whenever he was on duty, and then some of the other guys got to know me and they were like, "Hey, you can come by anytime, Tim." And so I just, kind of my safe place was the fire station. And when I turned 16 years old, that was when you could become a volunteer. And the chief had a set of bunker boots, brand new bunker boots, an old pair of bunker yellow pants and yellow coat and a beat up helmet. And there was a contract there. And he said, "Hey, you sign here and you're going to be a volunteer for the Toppenish fire department." And I was just like, I couldn't believe it. But it was kind of a big deal because I wore a size 16 shoe. I'm kind of a tall guy. I tell everyone I'm tall Tim when I introduce myself. And they, small town, right? They don't have a lot of money. They bought my boots. They bought my bunker boots. And that was just a huge thing that I just really felt like I was accepted. And so I was a volunteer. I got my first aid. I started working towards my EMT, that sort of thing. Graduated from high school. But prior to that, let me go back just a little bit. My uncle was Native American. He was a police officer in town. He worked his way up to like a sergeant. And then he went over to the tribal police. They asked him to come over and to apply for the chief position for the tribal police for the Yakima Indian Nation. And he got the job. And I think I was like maybe 16, 15 or 16, 17, something like that. I can't remember. It was back in the 70s. We were at dinner and our whole family was there. And my uncle, my aunt, and my three cousins, they have three girls. And a call came in. He had his pager or had his radio on him. A call came in that a couple of his officers were in a gunfight and shots fired and that sort of thing. And it wasn't too far from where the restaurant was. And so he took off and ended up, like I said, there's a lot of apples there. So they had these apple boxes that used to be wood. Now they're plastic. But they were made of wood and they'd stack them up. And it was just kind of like an open air place to stack these boxes, right? And so this is where these bad guys went into. It's kind of like a maze. And so they get in there and they're shooting back and forth at each other and stuff. And my uncle gets there and he comes around the corner and a bad guy is going up over a fence. And when the guy gets halfway, kind of straddles the fence, he turns and he shoots at my uncle. Well, there'd already been shots fired. So my uncle had his weapon already ready and he shot the bad guy kind of in the butt cheek and flipped him up over the fence. But my uncle went down and didn't understand what was going on because he said things were just kind of blurry and wasn't sure what was going on. They got the bad guy, everything got out of control, but they come around the corner and find my uncle and he's like bleeding like crazy. And what happened was he got shot in the face and he didn't realize it. He didn't understand. He thought maybe he got shot, but he didn't know where or what was going on. He kept looking around, but everything was blurry. Well, the blurriness was the blood that was, just kind of all over him in his face area. And so he had to have a couple of surgeries and ended up kind of like his face was kind of drooped, right? Kind of looked like he had a stroke. And he was a very handsome man before this. And so there was a lot of things that went into that really affected our family. And you have to realize, Chris, that back then they didn't have wellness. They didn't have peer support. They didn't have anything. I mean, a psychiatrist, nobody even knew what that, or a counselor, nobody knew what any of that stuff was. And so he just had to deal with it himself. And I saw how he dealt with it. And it was, drinking alcohol and doing the things that he did. It got to the point where he was embarrassed. He was ashamed. He felt guilty. The guy that he shot ended up going to jail and ended up committing suicide. He hung himself. There was just a lot to this incident, and it affected the whole department. It affected our town. Affected our family. And he finally got to the point where he was like, I can't handle this. And he packed up and he moved to the mountains. And that was it. We didn't see him again. He left my aunt and he left my three cousins. And, we were a tight family. And so, we all took care of each other and stuff. But the aftermath of that one incident just changed the course of a lot of lives. And so from that, I was, involved as a volunteer, and I just kind of stayed with the fire department. I thought for sure I'd become a cop, but after that, I was like, yeah, I don't know that I'm going to be doing that. And then from there, I went to Columbia Basin Community College in the Tri-Cities. And I became a volunteer there while I was there, and I played some basketball there and had a good time with that. But I volunteered at Benton County, and it's a whole different place now. When I was there, it was a lot of sagebrush, and we fought a lot of grass fires and wheat fires and things like that went out to the Columbia River, and it was primarily a volunteer department there as well. And then from there, I went to WSU, go Cougs. And I was in the fire department there at WSU. And it was a residential program, and, we all got our EMTs, and it was a great opportunity to, be able to go to WSU, get a 4-year degree, and be able to still be a volunteer. And whenever I'd go home, I was still a volunteer in Toppenish, in my hometown and stuff. And so I'd run calls and do stuff like that. And then I kind of lived out of my car for a while. I worked a lot of different jobs, and finally landed a job with the city of Kirkland. And I was there for 30 years, and it was a great It was a great career. I loved being a firefighter, and I did not want to retire. But in 2018, my mental wheels started falling off, and I didn't tell anybody. And started out with night sweats, and then went into nightmares, and then day terrors, and all kinds of stuff like that. My mind was going, like 100 miles an hour, and I just wasn't mentally doing well. And I went until 2021, and I was at a point where my bride was begging me to retire. I had my 30 years in, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell her. I didn't tell anybody at the department because I was embarrassed. Here I am, a senior firefighter, and we've got a bunch of these new guys coming in, and all these things that are happening in our department. We just got through COVID, and dealing with all that kind of stuff, and it was just not a good time to be leaving the department, I felt. But mentally, I couldn't do it anymore. I reached out to a couple of older guys that had retired a few years prior to me, and I talked to them a little bit. And one of them was a captain, and he called me Timmy, and he goes, "Hey Timmy," he goes, "I think you really need to retire. I think you need to hang it up." And so I said I wasn't ready. And a week later, he died, and that really hit me. It hit my bride, and she basically said, "Look, either you're turning in this resignation, or I'll do it." So then I went to my chief. I talked to him, told him that I was going to retire, and we both cried because he didn't want me to retire, and I didn't want to retire. And I thought, you know what? If I retire, everything will go back to normal. I'll be able to sleep again. I'll be able to relax. I'll be able to, be okay. And that didn't happen. Things got way worse, and I went real dark, and it was not healthy for anyone around me. And more importantly, it was not healthy for me, because I got to the point where I was ready to check out. So that's my fire service career in a nutshell.
That's a big nut. It's incredible. I mean, first of all, the way you wove that together with your uncle, and then to your more or less present day struggles, and then transitioning to stronger families. The tale itself is incredible. I gotta tell you, man, you got a voice on you that you can tell me, you can read anything or tell me any story. I think I'm gonna listen, because you got that old Western. A guy used to work with us that had a similar build, similar look in general to you, and the same cowboy voice. And you're like, you could just read the ingredients on flour to me, and I'm gonna listen to you and say whatever you want. So, man, I'm glad you worked out of the issues, and now you're presenting primarily because you got it going on with your delivery, my man. I got a couple questions that came up as you were telling just the last part of the story there. Well, a couple actually. So did your uncle's thing, the whole thing with your uncle, was that a constant point of reference in your mind over the course of your 40-ish year career of like, if this could be the call that sends me off the edge, or like a significant call ended up doing this to my uncle, and this is a significant call, so what is it going to happen to me? Was that always in the back of your head as you were going through this thing?
That's a really interesting question, Chris, because I have done a lot of digging in my rucksack is what we use when we're out talking out on the road. And I can explain more about that as we go along. But at the time, I'll say this, at the time, no. I saw the police department as one part of, public service kind of thing. And then the fire department was just a whole different world. And I just kind of looked at it that way. And once I got started in the fire service, I just knew that I wanted to be a firefighter. And I didn't think about the repercussions on the family. Again, I grew up in a small town. And so a firefighter didn't make very much money. And so it was very common for those firefighters to work other jobs. And so I put in my mind that, I want to be a firefighter, and I'm probably going to have to work, some other job to make, ends meet or whatever. But, yeah, I don't think I really thought about that much until I went through my dark time.
Sure.
And then I started thinking about my uncle, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what he went through, but yet I know what I'm going through right now. I don't think anybody realized what he was going through,
right?
Because nobody talked about it.
So, yeah, we're going to come back to that, I have a feeling, because it's such a formative part of your career and your journey here. On the topic of retiring during COVID, this is a question that I didn't ask many senior members while we were going through COVID. We got hit with it pretty hard. We were talking kind of before we got just absolutely worked by COVID. And we had a good number of people, probably 7 to 10 guys, who were within striking range of retirement. And from the lower side of my career, at the time I had like 13, 14 years on, all I kept thinking was like, why are these guys still here? Like, this thing is coming through and you're exposed to it constantly and it's just getting worse. Why are you sticking around? If I was looking for a reason to retire, this would be it. I'd be like, all right, this was a nice run. As this thing is sweeping through the fire department and my community, I'm out of here. I'm going to lessen my exposure to it. I trust that you guys can handle it. I'm out. That was my opinion of like, this would be a great opportunity for me to leave if I had the opportunity. From your perspective, did that make you want to stay though? Because, you guys out in that area were kind of the epicenter, or at least the origin for what a lot of news reports said. Did that give you more responsibility to stay, to lead people through that? Or what was your mentality while COVID was kind of in full swing?
For me personally, absolutely. I was a senior firefighter, and I knew we were going to be hiring a bunch of people because we, were going to be losing some people. And I saw it as my duty, if you will, to be an example. I always tried to be a good example, tried to be a good firefighter on the job and off the job. And because, being a firefighter or any first responder, you're in it for 24/7. And so I looked at it and I said, I really need to stay here. I need to take, be a part of this. But I got to that point, like I said, mentally, where, I wasn't sleeping 4 nights out of the week when I retired. Literally, I wasn't sleeping. And how bad it can be when you're not sleeping. If you lose 24 hours of sleep or 48 hours of sleep or, whatever, it can really affect you. But when you're, literally 4 nights out of the week, I was not able to sleep because it started with me where I wasn't able to sleep, like one night on a duty night, and we worked at 4896.
Okay.
And so 2 days on, 4 days off. And prior to that, we worked 1 day on, 2 days off. And then you had a Kelly day every seventh set. And anyway, it was one of those things that when we switched over to the 4896, I wasn't a real fan of it personally, because you can have me stand on my head for 24 hours. You know what I mean? I mean,
Right.
It's like you go to work and I'm here to serve my community in any way, shape, or form. And I don't care how many calls we run. I don't care what the calls consist of. I can handle it because I'm going to go home and I'm going to be able to, charge my batteries and do what I need to do in order to function, to come back and do another 24 hours. But when they switched over to 48 hours, it was a real mental shift for a lot of us older guys. And as much as we loved it, because you're off for 4 days, those 48 hours that you're on, it can be rough, right? If you're in a slow house, it's one thing, but if you're in a nonstop moving house, then that can be rough. And so, you know, we had these Kelly days that you were able to have, a 10-day block of time, and you would really kind of get to the point where it's like, okay, I can almost sleep and I can almost, really, really engage in my family and stuff. But those 48 hours, and then you come off of a busy house, you're tired when you get home. And so I would come home and my bride would be like, yeah, you're worthless to me for the first day.
Right.
And then at least half the day, right?
Yeah.
And then you engage in your family for 2 days, and then mentally you're preparing to go back. And so on that fourth day you're off, you're like, okay, mentally I have to mentally get ready to go back and work this heavy house. And so, you say it's 2 days on and 4 days off, but really it's not. And it depends on how long you do it for as well. And so, and a lot of things go into that, with your contract and your union and, whether you have a bid system and, all these different types of things, play into that. But during COVID, first of all, Kirkland is known for two big things. I tell people this all the time. Kirkland is, you see it when you walk into Costco, right? You see the Kirkland brand.
Yeah.
That's our city. That's the city of Kirkland. That's where Costco started.
Most of my wardrobe has your city's logo on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much across America is that way, right? And then the other and Costco thanks you for that. By the way.
No problem.
The other thing Kirkland is known for is what you just said, and it's the pandemic. Life Care Center is where it started, and that was our first do-in area.
Oh,
and
come
so,
on.
No, I'm serious. So here's the thing you're not going to hear about probably is like a third of our department was sick. So this came out, the pandemic came out in March, right? It was like March, was it 28th or something like that? I can't remember. And so, but prior to that, December and January, about a third of our department was out sick.
Wow.
And we were out sick thinking we had the flu.
Right.
And so, guys would go in and they'd get their Z-Pack and they would, go through, the doctor thing, and they'd get better. But this one lasted longer. Like some of the guys were out for 3 weeks, right? I mean, it was out, they were out for a while. So it really hit our department big time. And we just thought it was the flu.
Right.
And so then when it comes out where it's, the pandemic, that's when, everything really changed. And, I was also on the hazmat team. And so, the hazmat team kind of got called in a little bit on this too. And they said, hey, and we're trained, right? We know how to handle biological things. We know how to, wear our level B suits and things like that. And so they're like, hey, what should we do? And so we, a hazmat team got together and we said, hey, we really need to, think using level B when we're going into this place. And, we need to isolate this place and da, 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 da. Well, then the phone calls got made, and before you know, the CDC is involved, and they're coming in going, no, you're not doing that. No, you're not doing that. And I kid you not, Chris, every single day you would come to work, you can ask any of these firefighters, every single day you would come to work. And every single day you were at work, for 48 hours, right? So each day a policy would change.
Oh, yeah.
Every single day. It was crazy. It was crazy. And then they started taping off areas and saying, this is the clean area, this is the dirty area. And you had to, soak your feet in these bathtubs, all this stuff. And I mean, it was nuts.
Yeah.
And all the departments around the country are calling Kirkland to find out, okay, what are you doing? How are you doing this? What's your reasoning for this? And all this kind of stuff. And it was insane. It was literally insane. And I think, in the fire service, we see change all the time. We see it all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is that, there's that saying that firefighters love change, but the one thing they hate is they hate change.
Right.
Right? I
Right.
mean, and so there was so much change going on at one time that some people just didn't know how to handle it.
Right.
And there was some people will take change and they'll embrace it and they'll say, okay, you want me to do that? Sure, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Other people will take change and like, hey, wait a minute, why are we doing this?
Mm-hmm.
What's your reasoning? What's the scientific proof behind that? Right.
Yeah.
And that's the hazmat team, right? The hazmat team's all sitting there analyzing every single thing that's happening, going, why are we doing it that way?
Right.
So there was a huge amount of dysfunction during this pandemic. And then, at work, when you're at work and you're dealing with the sick people or, whatever it is you're doing, you then leave and you go home. But this pandemic affected our families, right? Because they're hearing things in the news. They're starting to shut down schools. You can't go to practice. And, oh, by the way, you're a firefighter or a police officer. Hey, we don't even want you to come to, we don't want you to come anywhere near us.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm sure you guys went through the same thing, but it happened here and then it just trickled, across the whole entire country. And I think for a lot of firefighters, they were just like, especially the older guys, they were just like, you know what? I don't need this.
Right.
I just don't need it. And you got to remember that these guys are going out with a full career, right? Some of them are 25, 30 years in. And so they've already done their career and they might have gone another 5 years. Like myself, I could have gone, I felt, I've told people if mentally I was okay, I'd still be a firefighter. But mentally I was hurt. And in my words, broken. And I was afraid to tell anybody about it. And so I just left.
Was that tied
Go
to
ahead.
a lot of stress from COVID then? Because I didn't know your involvement in the initial stages of that thing was so intimate. Would you tie a lot of your mental fatigue and getting to that point because of the magnifying glass you guys were under?
I would say that it didn't help,
Right.
But you got to remember, for me in 2018, prior to all this, right? That's when I started waking up with night sweats.
Okay.
And so something went, haywire for me in 2018, and I stretched it out until 2021.
Right.
And by the time when I actually retired and I left the fire station, so I get off shift, 7:00 in the morning and say goodbyes to my people and stuff. And I come home and my son's here from the Tri-Cities and my daughter and my bride, and they're all crying on the stairs of our house. And I live an hour north. I live it's called Camano Island is where I live. And we have a little hobby farm. We've got horses and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And so I come home, coming down the driveway, and there's my family standing there, and they're crying. And as soon as I saw them crying, I started crying. And it was just a cry fest. And I'm not a crier, but I am now for the last year or so, I've had these emotional things happening to me that have never happened to me before. And it comes out in different ways. But in their minds, I was home, and they didn't have to worry about me being at work and doing the things that I did and the activities that I was involved in. Because I was heavily involved in my department. I said I was on the hazmat team. I was on the water rescue team. I was a truckie for 20 years, rope rescue, trench rescue, safety committee, heavily involved in my local 2545, our union. I was, I did everything, and heavily involved in all of it. And And when I came home, it was really hard. It was really, really hard. And things got worse for me as I wasn't going back to work, and I knew I wasn't going back to work. And that's when Stronger Families came into my life. Uh, Kind of an interesting story. I get this phone call from this guy from Texas, and he goes, "Hey, you don't know who I am. My name is Noel Metter, and I work for a nonprofit organization called Stronger Families. I'd like to meet with you and tell you about it." And I'm like, "Okay." And he goes, I'm flying up. I'm flying up from Texas, and I'm going to meet with you." And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah,
and
right.
so I tell my bride about it, and the meeting, is like a couple of days later, and she's like, "Okay, you're not going to sign anything. You're not giving him any money, and you're
Right.
not going to do
Yeah.
anything." And so I meet with him, and he tells me about this organization, and he shows me some of the material, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing."
Hmm.
And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "My wife and I, we wrote this, and it's called Oxygen, the curriculum." And I said, "Can I show this to my bride?" And he's like, "I want you to. I want you to take it home. I want you to show it to her and tell me, what you think." And so I bring it home. I show it to her. She's like, "This is amazing. This is absolute. Where was this, 28 years ago when we got married?" And so we started looking at this, and they were having interviews with me and stuff, and I kept telling them, I'm like, you know, I said, "Look, I'm retired. Financially I'm okay." And I said, "I can volunteer and I can help, do whatever you need help with." And he goes, because they were in the military, right? They
Hmm.
did all this in the military, and I just thought it was amazing. And he goes, "No, you don't understand." He goes, "We want to bring this information, these tools, to first responders." And I went, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "And we need someone that understands that world, that can, bring this information and materials into the first responder world."
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Well, I'm not your guy." And he goes, why do you say that?" And I said, "Because I am mentally broken. I am physically broken. I am spiritually broken. And you do not want to take this on." And I go, "You need someone at a chief level. You need someone that, really knows people and does stuff." And I kept having these interviews. They kept calling me. And my bride said, "You know what? Maybe this is something that you need to do." Because literally my mind was going 1,000 miles an hour, and I couldn't sleep, even worse.
Yeah.
And I was just falling apart, dude. And I didn't know what to do. And so I said, "Okay, look, I'll do it. I'll do it for a year. I'll try it out for a year." And he goes, "Okay, so what should we do?" And I said, "Well," I go, "we got to get it out to the first responders, and we can do that by department. We can do that." I go, "There's this organization called First Responder Conferences, and I don't know, who she is, but I go, she's a sheriff, and we need." So we went and talked to Sean Thomas, and we said, "Hey, look, this is what Stronger Families is. I'm new to this game. I'm a retired firefighter." I said, "Is this something? I think this is something, but is this something that you think would fit with first responder conferences and what you're trying to do for wellness and that sort of thing?" And she's like, "Absolutely."
Right.
And so we started going to these conferences, with first responder conferences, these health and wellness conferences. And I'm sitting there representing Stronger Families, right? And these people are up on stage, and they're telling their stories of PTSD, stress, all these different things. There's doctors, there's, just, firsthand experiences telling their stories. And dude, I'm sitting at this table bawling. I'm crying. And I'm like, I don't know why. I don't understand what's going on. But the more I learned about these people and what they were representing, I came home one time from one of these trips, and it's like the third one. And I told my bride, I said, I think I have PTSD.
Hmm.
And she's like, what? And so we started doing research. My wife is a researcher, and she just totally dove into it. And she's reading all this stuff, and she's texting me, because I'm still doing things for Stronger Families and everything. She's like, yes, you're a mess.
Yeah.
You have all this stuff. You need to, and so it all came to a head when, and I started learning about these resources, right? I was going to these conferences representing Stronger Families, but I'm learning about these resources that are available for first responders in this PTS, stress world. And I'd never heard of them before. I never heard of any of these places. I never heard of Deer Hollow. I never heard of Mighty Oaks. I never heard of, all these different places that are out there that are there for this particular thing that first responders go through. And so I'm coming back and I'm collecting this information and I'm bringing it back to my bride, and we're looking through it, and we're reading through it, we're making phone calls, we're doing all this kind of stuff. And finally, one of my buddies who had a PTS issue, he calls me up and he says, hey man, you need to go to Mighty Oaks. And so I said, okay. I'm at a point now where it's like, Chris, what do I do? Right. I mean, my brain's about ready to blow up, and I'm ready to blow my brains up. Right. And so I said, okay, I'll go. And so it was a week-long thing. It was all about how to get right with God, and how to read your Bible. And, it was a Christian-based organization, and it was a week-long thing. And I saw some people transform their lives, and it was amazing. And I was glad I went. It was a great experience, and I'd recommend, anybody to check it out. But for me personally, I needed more. I needed more time. I needed more help to understand what I was dealing with, right? And so a week was just not enough. And so I went to this one conference, and Matt Quackenbush was there. I don't know if you've talked to him or have you heard of him.
No, I haven't.
Dude, he is someone you have to have on your podcast. Matt Quackenbush is, I call him the Magic Man. And he has his own podcast. I can give you that information later.
Yeah.
But he is a guy that's working on getting his doctorate degree in PTSD for first responders.
Okay.
That's what he's getting his doctorate in. So this guy so he's a counselor. He's not a first responder, but he gets us, man. He understands our world. He's talked to thousands of us, and he is, I just call him the Magic Man. I heard him speak, and he challenged me to start taking cold showers. And I'm looking at him like, are you nuts? I am not taking, and he goes, no, seriously. He goes, dude, you need to, you need to go to Deer Hollow. And so I looked at it, and it was a 45-day program, and at that time, and I couldn't do it, right? Because I'm working for Stronger Families. And so I'm trying to do this stuff for Stronger Families and everything. And I talked to Noel, and I said, hey man, I don't know what's going on, but I'd been sharing some of the things that I'd been dealing with and stuff. And he was really concerned about me. And so I called Matt, and I said, hey, I can't do this. And he goes, well, okay, can you do this? He goes, we have an outpatient program. It's 6 weeks long. It's 3 hours per session, and it's 3 times a week. Can you do that? And so I said, yeah, I can do that. And so I signed up for it. I went through the program. It was absolutely amazing. It's built so that a first responder can come into it at any time. And so, like, I'm on week 6, and you come in at week 1, you're going to see things differently than me that is just finishing the program. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just ongoing. It's just an ongoing program.
Okay.
And they just feed people into this this online curriculum. It's by Zoom kind of thing, right? And Matt was one of the facilitators of it, and 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 he got me to do things that I never thought I would do. And what I mean by that is, I have dyslexia pretty bad, and so for me to write something is it's like, I just would rather, have you drop a rock on my foot or something. I
Right.
mean, it's just not my thing, man. But he was able to get me to write things down that I've never addressed in my life.
Hmm.
And it was painful. It was horrible. I hated it. Um, I literally threw up. I had to read this thing out loud to these people that I don't even know, right, on this Zoom call thing. And halfway through it, I had to, I had to just, I had to throw up.
Hmm.
And Matt's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, he's not in my room, right? He's on this screen, and he's like, yeah, just get it out, man. Just, he's just like, let it go,
Yeah.
man, let it go.
Yep.
And it was literally one of the hardest things I've ever done in my
Wow.
life was go through that program. But I really believe it helped save my life. So I believe that there's these things that have happened in my life in the last couple of years that have helped save my life. And that's why I'm able to talk to you on this call right now. Because, dude, I was ready to check out. I was totally ready to check out.
Yeah.
And it's people like Matt, it's Sean Thomas with First Responder Conferences, and the different people that she's had as speakers, Noel Metter, and this whole oxygen program is what really saved my life. And yeah, and so I have a real passion for first responders, and I have a real passion for this material that Stronger Families has, and resources. I don't want any first responder to think that there's not resources out there for them to deal with the stress and the trauma and the stuff that we have a tendency to stuff into our rucksack and not really address it. So yeah. Yeah.
I just want you to keep going, man. I'm so,
Okay.
Dude, my only regret from this whole thing is that my audience isn't bigger for them to hear all this. And I hope this gets shared so far and wide, because I've said it on here before. I absolutely love giving a shit about people who give a shit. Like, it's my favorite thing to do, regardless of what discipline or interest or whatever it is, right? If you care about stacking dominoes in abstract patterns and you love it and you love to show off how you love to do it, I want to watch you do that. So to hear you speak so passionately about this stuff, and also never heard of Mighty Oaks or Deer Hollow or Matt Quackenbush, and I feel like I should have, but I haven't, and I'm so excited that now I know about it, and you brought this to me and to the listenership. So I'm just jazzed, man, and I love hearing you talk about it. And what else can we talk about? Well,
I you know what? If it's okay, I'd love to share with you what Stronger Families is all about.
Oh yeah, absolutely that.
Stronger Families, like I said, it came into my life, and I think it came into my life for a purpose. If Noel wouldn't have made that phone call, I don't know that I'd be here. And so, again, it just goes back to the timing, right? It's just weird. But so Stronger Families is a nonprofit organization, and it's been around since the late 80s. They've been primarily in the military world, and I think they have I want to say 1,500 to 2,000 chaplains that have taken on this program, and they share it with military people. And we're talking all the special forces. We're talking about, the Air Force, the Marine, everybody. I mean, it's a military thing. And the way they got into it was they had a general that went to one of Noel and Carissa's conferences, and he looked at the material that they wrote, and he said, we need this in the military. And so he helped navigate them to get this material and this program called Oxygen approved by our United States Pentagon. And so that's kind of a big deal.
I'd say so.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so they have served over 70,000 military and first responders to this date on this Oxygen curriculum. And when I got into it, and when I say I got into it, I mean my bride and I, right? Because again, I have dyslexia. It's not easy for me to navigate emails and that kind of written communication. Thank you for the encouragement on the verbal communication, but it's, we know that there's more to it. And so my bride has been so supportive of me. And I say this all the time. I'm just lucky she married me. And I'm so lucky that she stays married to me. And through this really dark time and this major transition for us, our kids are adults and they've left the home, right? Her husband's retiring and she's used to having the house to herself, 2 days out of the,
right.
kind of, right. And now I'm home and now I come home and now I'm a mental case, and then I start a new job and, all this stuff. And she stays with me through all that, man. I just, it's
she's
amazing.
Probably ready for you to hit the road again, start presenting. She's like, all right, I got my quiet nighttime TV time back.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, this program called Oxygen, they primarily do retreats. And so in the military, they would have, people that, you have a lot of young families in the military, right? And when I say families, I mean two people coming together and making a family. I think sometimes we in society, we think of a family as it's this husband, wife, and then you add, they get married and then you have kids and now you're a family.
Right.
I don't think that's right. I think when you bring two people together that love each other, that's your family. And now when you have kids, you add to that family. Because what's going to happen, Chris, is your kids are going to grow up and they're going to leave home.
Right.
And what you're left with is your wife. And so you want to put all your, you have to put energy and you have to put work into that relationship with that person that you love, because they're the one that's going to be there, because your kids are going to leave at some point. And I think we miss that. And so stronger families is about, when I say stronger families, it's that couple, right? It's those two people that fell in love with each other and are wanting to, make this thing work. And then when you have kids, that just increases the size of your family. So I think that's a really, a really big deal. When we looked at this material, I was like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely amazing. Now, how are we going to transform this into the first responder world? And one of the things that we, I was maybe one of the examples of, hey, there's this thing called PTSD for first responders out there that nobody's really addressing in a way that a spouse understands it, right? Because I think the first responder at work gets educated on it a little bit, and for me it was like, well, that's not going to happen to me, right? That's not going to happen to me. I'm fine. I go on my calls, I do whatever I do. I come home. My bride says to me, "Hey, how was your shift?" It was fine, even though I might have had, a CPR call or a kid that got hit by a car, or, a fatality fire, or whatever the case may be. I didn't talk about that. I would just, kind of keep it to myself. Why? Because I wanted to protect my family. I
Right.
wanted to protect my bride. I wanted to protect my kids. But that wasn't healthy for me. And that's what I'm trying to educate people on now as we go around the country. But with this oxygen curriculum, we looked at it and we said, you know what? I looked at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I said, this is so good for first responders, and it's so good for their families, because so many of us first responders, we come into relationships from, and Matt will tell you this, he will say this, 80% of us, dude, 80% of us come from a family that was dysfunctional and possibly even abusive. And we go into the first responder world. And it's a subconscious thing that we're making, saying, I want to do better. I want to make my world better. I want to make my community better. I want to help people, right? Because maybe something happened when I was a kid where I didn't get the help. And it's like, I want to help make a difference. 80%, dude. That's crazy. And so what happens is we go through life, we go through our career, we make this decision that we want to be a first responder. And so we've already started filling stuff into our rucksack, right? And now you go on calls and you see the things that you maybe have seen or heard or smelt or whatever the case may be in your life on that call. And you don't deal with it. You just stuff it away. And so you take the trauma, you take the stress, and let's face it, I don't know about your department, but in my department, my administration and my union, they fought for my entire career. We never had a contract signed on time.
Yeah.
Right now, my department, Kirkland Fire Department, is almost 2 years without a contract.
Yeah.
That creates stress. That's what we call administrative stress, right? And sometimes you might have a battalion chief that is saying something about your specific crew, and it's like kind of making you the scapegoat or something like that. It's those kinds of things that can happen. Or maybe you have an officer that is just very unhappy with life. And so everybody comes to work and they're just not happy at work, right? I mean, so you've got this dynamic that you can't escape, and it causes more stress. So if you have stress at work, that's going to create more stress at home. If you have more stress at home, that's going to create more stress at work, right? I mean, it's a teeter-totter,
Right,
that you're trying to balance. And so Stronger Families comes in and says, hey, you know what? We're going to give you proven tools that will help you be successful in being a family. We're going to help you learn how to communicate. We're going to help you understand conflict. So many times you ask the question, do you think conflict is good in a relationship? There's a lot of people that will say, absolutely no. I avoid conflict as much as I possibly can. And other people will say, oh no, conflict is good, because once you go through conflict, then you can, get to the other side and make up and everyone's happy. Well, the answer kind of goes both ways, but it all depends on how you deal with that conflict.
right.
If you deal with it in a healthy way, then it's going to come out a much healthier way, right? But if you don't deal with it a healthy way, we know what that looks like.
Yeah.
We've all been on that call. We've all been on that call.
Yeah, when you bring up some interesting conflict too, the union and the administration fighting is that was a staple for us until probably 3 or 4 years ago, surprisingly. Where I think at the time when I had 12 or 13 years on, I think I had been under contract for less than half of that, and the amount of betrayal you feel, and then the sides that get chosen, and then the lines that are drawn. And then you see how it trickles down to like the people who were never ever involved in that conflict, they carry that chip now because they've been informed about it and now they're on the lookout for it. It's such a strange thing that's so damaging, and
Yeah.
man, we're healing from it now. I think, both sides agree for my department that we're in a better spot than we have been in a long time, and but we still get guys that are new or have less than 2 or 3 years on that are like super adversarial because they're getting fed that stuff, and so it's a pervasive thing that just kind of keeps growing unless you actively combat it, and at the same time, people are nervous to combat it because you never know, once this chief leaves or once the new city manager comes in or once something happens, we might be right back to it. So nobody wants to be the one that stands up and says, "Oh, things are good now," because it might get thrown back in your face. It's just it's such a minefield,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that, and I have met some people that are in departments where their administration and their union, they get along great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look at those people and I'm like, really? Are you just saying that, or are you really being, and it's like, no, there are some places where they, they're able to actually even have lunch together, right? The chief and the union president are actually able to go out and have lunch together.
Yeah. Well, if you said you listened to a few episodes, if you've listened to any episode with Joe Galley, he's our union president, and how could you not like that guy, right? But still, he was a lot of years where there was some serious conflict going on with the administration of years past. So, where are we at with Stronger Families? I don't want to cut that topic off preemptively.
Okay, yeah. So, Stronger Families, I looked at their material, and after I said, okay, I'll do this for a while, I said, okay, you need to realize that this other world that we're in, this first responder world, they need this material. They need to communicate better. They need to learn how to deal with conflict. And so they said, well, what would that look like? And so our team came up with what we call the wellness block training. And there's actually 6 topics, one's on communication, one's on conflict, one's on, understanding, differences and lifestyles, and, there's just different topics. And one of the things that Stronger Families does is they have this assessment that they use to help you understand yourself and the people that you're around. So for example, at work, it would be putting on that work hat and thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to do this personality assessment at work. And it kind of tells you how you want to be communicated with and how it's good for you to communicate with other people. For example, there's 8 spots, or there's 8 different styles, if you will, of this personality assessment. And I'll just explain one real briefly and just kind of give you an idea of kind of what it looks like. And you go through these series of questions, and after you go through these series of questions, they're able to kind of say, well, your personality is kind of like this. So let's say one of them is it looks like a compass, and so one of the stars on the compass is called the driven partner. Okay, and the driven partner is the type of person that, I mean, we all know the type of people that are driven, and maybe you're that person, I don't know, but this type of person is the person that their choice of vehicle is they wake up in the morning and they go fire up a bulldozer. And they are, it's a diesel, so they got to let it warm up a little bit, right? And meanwhile, they're checking their list of things to do for the day. And it's like, okay, I've got all these things on this list of things that I got to get done. And I've got I went out and I got my bulldozer all fired up. And last night before I got, off, before ready for bed, I sharpened the blade really well. And so now I'm ready to roll. And so I am going to go through this day and I'm going to get all these things achieved. And the problem is you look around and it's like, oh, wait a minute. Who's that? Oh, that's my coworker. I ran over my coworker.
Right.
Oh, wait a minute. There's my kids. Oh, and there's my wife. She's trying to, wave a flag at me or something, and we're like, look at all these great things that I got accomplished. But what did I hurt to get it accomplished, right? And it's like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. But it's just that type of personality.
Yeah.
And so this assessment is able to look at these things and figure these things out. And you can see it from a work perspective, because so many times, you're sitting at a table with somebody at work and you're looking at across the table and you're like, and you're talking about something and they come up with, this idea, and you're looking at them going like, where did you come up with that idea? What are you thinking? What planet are you from? And it's just because they see things, a little bit differently. Doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's just that it's different. And so we really work on that. And then on the other thing that we use that assessment for is at home, and that relationship at home. And so we have these couples retreats that are, we do them all over the country, and sometimes departments will have us come in and do them, and organizations and stuff. But we have the couples go through a couples assessment also. So you're able to look at each other from a couple standpoint, and you're able to look at your personalities and see how they mend together, and what's working well together, and what maybe needs work on, right, to make it better. And that's really what we do as part of this retreat, is we do these assessments, and it really helps people understand their relationship better. And the other thing that we talk about, I mentioned, was the PTS portion of the retreat. And it's not necessarily for the first responder. It's for that loved one that they care about that really doesn't understand, because our spouse, they see the symptoms, right? They don't know what the problem is. They don't know where the problem's coming from,
right?
But they see the symptoms, right? They see that you're not sleeping. They see that you are easily, ticked off. They see, that you are not, you're isolating yourself from maybe them or the kids or the family or, society in general, right? They see when you watch the news, you get angry, and they see the abuse maybe that you're, starting to dive into, maybe with alcohol or, pornography or whatever it is, right? I mean, we go to these vices to try to make ourselves feel better. And our spouses, our families see that. One thing that I have seen since I've been in this wellness world is I'm seeing more first responders that are isolating themselves to the point where they don't want to leave their house. And that's a real thing.
Is that with newer, with younger firefighters, you think? Because I feel like there's a generational difference where it's just where independence and solitude is more of a commonplace with the younger generation of firefighters compared to like the softball team, bowling team, hang out at the VFW or the American Legion that used to be around.
I think that I think you have first responders that see the after effect through other people around them, and they're like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have an affair, or maybe I've already had 2 or 3 marriages, right? And I'm like, I'm just going to isolate. I am just going to not talk to anybody. I'm just not going to do this. And I don't think it's necessarily an age thing. What I do see as an age thing is these younger people that are coming into the first responder world, they have an expectation. And their expectation is that they want to come and they want to serve their community, and they want to help people, but they want an administration that is going to help them. So they expect the peer support. They expect the opportunity to go away for a month if they are dealing with PTSD, issues, and then be able to come back to work, right? I mean, there's an expectation there, and it's a new way of looking at this first responder world, I think. And I think administrative people, the chiefs and that sort of thing, they're looking at this going, how can we bring this wellness in a way that we can educate and prevent these things from happening? Because let's face it, if you leave your department for 45 days, that's a hit on your department.
Oh yeah.
And right now it's a huge hit because everybody across the country is in mandatory overtime. And so the chief is, I talk to chiefs all the time, and they're like, Tim, I understand what you're saying about this wellness, but what do I do when I have a guy that isn't coming back to work? He's not coming back. And I feel like there's this protection with this umbrella of PTSD. And I said, you know what? I don't know the answer.
Right.
All I know is that we need to get to the point where we can be preventative, because we have so many new first responders. And when I say first responders, Chris, I'm not talking just fire and police. I'm talking Department of Corrections. I'm talking Border Patrol. I'm talking, the world. What about our MEs? Right? What about our medical examiners?
Yeah.
Those people are first responders, right? I mean, those are the people that are hurting. And they're the ones that are committing suicide because they're getting to the point where it's like, you know what? I can't handle the stress anymore.
Yeah.
And so what can we do, Chris? What can we do to help prevent this stuff? And that's where the wellness comes in. And that's where Stronger Families comes in. That's where these other organizations come in. It's like, look, let's educate these brand new recruits about wellness. Let's educate them on what they can do when they get off shift. We just came up with something that my team put together, and we call it the Stronger Family 30-Day Challenge, End Your Shift Well. And it's real basic stuff. Number one, you get off shift, you take a cold shower. Taking a cold shower, let me ask you, Chris, do you take cold showers?
No.
Okay, here's your challenge, buddy.
Yeah.
I want you to start taking a cold shower. And the goal is to work yourself up to 4 minutes. And here's why.
I should say this. Sometimes I do, because we're on a well with a on-demand water heater, and for some reason it craps out in the middle of the shower sometimes. I think there's about 37 minutes of cold water that comes out of that thing for some reason to make it 20 feet from the heater to the tap. It takes forever. So inadvertently, I'm going to give myself credit for several cold showers in my lifetime, but never on purpose. I'll tell you that much.
So when Matt Quackenbush challenged me to this, I hated him. I absolutely hated him. And he goes, but Tim, he goes, start off with 30 seconds. He goes, do your shower, shampoo, shine, whatever you need to do. He goes, do it, and then turn it to cold water for 30 seconds. I'm like, okay. And so then he goes, and then go to 45 seconds, and then go to a minute, and then go to whatever. And he goes, work up to 4 minutes. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm that guy. If you give me a challenge, I'm going to do it. And so, remember when you used to do push-up challenges and squat challenges and all that stuff? Yeah, I was a knucklehead. I did all that stuff. And it was all for a good cause, right? But it was a challenge. And so my challenge is for people to take a cold shower. And here's why. You take the cold shower and you're like, this sucks. I hate this. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. But guess what, Chris? You're not thinking about anything else. You're not thinking about your family. You're not thinking about your shift. You're not thinking about any stress. You're not thinking about the news. You're not thinking about politics. You're not thinking about anything. All you're thinking about is this sucks in this moment where I am right here, right now. And your body is tense and you're breathing fast and your mind stops racing because it's just thinking about one thing. And then when you get out of that shower, there is a calmness that comes over you and you just feel better.
Well, we got 2 weeks until we're presenting together at
absolutely
in South Bend. So I'll tell you what, in the next 2 weeks, I'll start with 30 seconds. See that? This is the kind of person I am. I have to set my own terms to it because
that's okay.
there's no way you're going to tell me how to do my arbitrary challenge. So I have to pretend like I'm in control of this thing, even though I'm absolutely not, because I wouldn't be doing it. But I'll start with 30 seconds. We'll work up to it, and I'll give you the results when we get to South Bend. But I will.
Awesome.
So one or two things will happen. I'll either like it and I'll keep doing it, or I won't shower for the next 2 weeks, which is fine.
There you go.
Either way, I won't mind, and Katie will have to deal with it. Dude, you've taken us on a journey today. This has been a lot. It feels like we've been talking for several hours. It's only been just over an hour. I mean, but the ground we covered was just expansive. I mean, from the initial story with your uncle to then, knowing now that you were on the literal ground floor, literally and figuratively, of COVID, your journey through that into Stronger Families. Real quick, I don't want to get another half hour on this unnecessarily, but who was your guardian angel that called Noel to call you? Because how is that? Who sold you out on that one to get you the number?
So it's kind of a funny thing. Little bit of a story here, okay? My bride and I used to teach some classes to help couples, right? And again, my dyslexia kicks in, and so we would read books, and she would actually read them, and then she would highlight the book for me, and then she'd make an outline for me, and I would take these outlines to work, and I'd read them, right? Because I was trying to do better. I wanted to do better for my family and my marriage. And guys at work are like, "Hey, what are you reading?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm reading this book." "That's not a book." And I'm like, "Well, it's about a book." And
yeah, right.
So then, right? So
Yeah.
so then I got kind of known as the relationship guy. Well, we started a peer support program, and we started working with other departments. And there was this guy named Mark Anderson. He's a battalion chief for Bellevue Fire Department, and currently still. And he knew me, and we had done some things together. And he knew about, my wife and I doing some classes and stuff. And he was talking to Noel, and he learned about Stronger Families, and he was kind of, helping him out and stuff. And he goes, "Hey, there's this guy that's retiring, and you need to talk to him."
Wow.
And so that's how my name got to Noel Metter.
Wow.
and Stronger Families. But let me finish this 30-day challenge. It's real quick.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Because we do the cold shower, right? And then you do box breathing, or where you breathe in, you hold your breath for 4 or 6 seconds, whatever, and then you breathe out for 4 or 6 seconds. It's a box, right? You do that for about a minute, and this is when you get off shift, right? So you've taken your cold shower, you go sit in your car, you do your box breathing. And then you go and you pull out your journal, and every first responder should have a journal. Write down what happened in your shift, whether it's a 8-hour shift or a 48-hour shift, doesn't matter. Write down what bugged you, what bothered you, right? And then one of the things that you'll get when you come to the conference, I think we're speaking on the first day, or maybe it's the second. I don't know, I can't remember, but there's these words that are called feelings when your needs are not being satisfied. And for me, when I was going through, and it's a whole list of stuff, and when I was going through my journey, my bride would say, "Hey, how are you feeling? What are you doing?" And I didn't have words. I literally didn't have words. And so I'd take out this piece of paper, and I'd look, and I'd say, "You know what? I feel miserable."
Right. Right.
And I put that in there. So I want you to write those feelings down in that journal. And then what you do from that is you go back to your box breathing, and it's whether you want to pray or meditate, whatever your thing is, breathe that stuff out. Breathe that negative stuff out and say, "I'm releasing this. I don't want to take this home. I don't want to take it to my family." And then once you do that, you do your breathing again. And then in your journal, write 3 things that you're thankful for. And it could be your family. It could be any 3 things. It could be, you like your truck, whatever. And then on your way home, I want you to pick a geographical area like a bridge or a big willow tree, whatever, whatever geographical area you have, and say to yourself, I'm releasing this again. I want to release this junk. I don't want to take it with me. I don't want to put it in my rucksack. I want to release it. And then from there, you go home, you engage with your family. And let's say you had a really bad shift. Maybe you had a baby call or amputation or whatever bad call you were on. And you walk in and you're able to speak to your partner and say, you know what, you have a code word. For me, it's bananas. This set was, how was your set? It was bananas. That lets her know that, you know what, Dad had a rough day and he had a rough set, and we need to kind of let him decompress. And I know that he's already done this other stuff, like he did the cold shower, he did the breathing, he did all these things, but something may pop up through this day that takes Dad back to that call. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because so many times our families, the minute you walk in the door, as first responders, we're trained to walk into a scene and assess within 30 seconds, sick, not sick, right? It's like, is this person sick? Do they need a medic, or are we going to be able to handle this BLS? And our family does the same thing. When you come home, within 30 seconds, they know whether you had a good shift or a bad shift. But if it's a bad shift, how is that going to affect us as a family? That is the question we don't know.
Right.
And so we put our family, we put our kids, we put our people on edge because they know we had a bad day. And it doesn't have to be a call, Chris, right? It could be the administration. Right. It could be that, we've been almost, a year or whatever without a contract. So whatever it could be. So anyway, brother, I just want to thank you for what you're doing and what you're doing to help. But again, I want to encourage you to make sure that you're taking care of your family and that you're taking care of your bride and you're taking care of your kids. And most importantly, that you're taking care of yourself. And that's what I would say to all your listeners as well.
Man, this is your show now. You can just have it. I'll send you all the microphones. I'll send you everything. It's all yours. You can bring it all.
Have me back anytime you want.
I'm bringing it all to South Bend, and you're going to have a trunk full of stuff, and I couldn't be more happy to give it to you because, dude, you're an excellent guest, and I'm really excited to see you speak. I hope you're on the second day. I'm coming the second morning, and I'm speaking right after lunch on the second day, so I'm sure I'll see you there. I hope I get to see you speak and present because I like it. I want some more, and I'm excited to see it again.
If you don't, I can record it and I can send it to you or something.
For sure. I'm sure we'll be seeing more because as soon as my wife hears about this episode, she'll be like, "What was that guy's name again? And what does he do?" I'm like, so then then
hey,
we're in.
We got it. Honestly, Chris, we got to get you to a retreat, brother.
I tell you what, man, it sounds very. I was looking on the website and just the list of offerings there, and it all seems very approachable and very accessible, and those two things more than anything, to be honest with you. So I'm sure that'll be a conversation in our house when this episode comes out, no doubt.
Awesome.
Dude, you have a lot of stuff I need you to list off. I need you to list off where people find you, Stronger Families. If you have any contact for Mighty Oaks and Deer Hollow, if you have contacts for Matt Quackenbush, anything or anyone that you want people to learn or know or look up about, give it to me.
Man, I will send you. So for the year and a half, almost 2 years now that I've been doing this with Stronger Families, I made a pledge to myself that I would make a list of resources. Anytime I learn of one, I write it down. And I have, it's like 4 pages long now of resources. And you know what, Chris, I'll send that to you.
Yeah, do that.
And you can share it with your listeners, whatever. I mean, I don't own it. And it's the more resources that we have, the healthier we're going to be.
Yeah. Well, give me
because hopefully something's going to commit. So for me,
yeah,
you can contact me, a couple different ways. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. You can email me. My email address it's tim.sears, SEARS, at strongerfamilies.org. And you can go to the Stronger Family website. That's strongerfamilies.com. However you want to get in touch with me, you can reach out and go from there. And it's just another resource for our brothers and sisters out there to stay healthy.
Yeah. Tim, thank you. Thanks for everything, man.
Thank you, Chris.
This has been awesome. This has been awesome. I can't wait to see you in South Bend, my man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. And I think we are speaking on day one.
Okay.
But I'll be at the booth. I'll be there at the booth. And if any of your listeners want to come by and talk to me or whatever, we'll be there.